Well, hello, everybody. My name is Garrett Schmidt, and I'm the CEO and managing editor of VBC Exhibit Hall. And I'd like to welcome you all to today's live webinar hosted by Actual Meds. And this one is called STARS Adherence, the winning formula, the race to five-star medication adherence. And I had a little preview of this earlier, and so I think you're going to be really happy with what we talk about today. So excited to get to that in a second. But a couple items of note before we get started, just some housekeeping things. Everyone is joined today in listen-only mode. So this is a traditional webinar format. You don't need to turn off your microphone or your camera. But we are going to have a time for some Q&A, and so we do want to hear from you, and we're going to do that towards the end. But if you have a question at any time during the presentation, you can ask that using your control module. There's a place for questions. And so again, we're going to have that. We're also going to have some polling questions so that you can participate from home. This will be a little bit of an interactive presentation today. Also, today's session is being recorded. So what's going to happen is when we conclude, you're going to receive an email when we're done in about maybe an hour or so after, and it will have a link to the recording as well as to the slides. And that way you can download those. And you're going to want to do that because there's a lot of great content and material on here. And that way you can rewatch it at your leisure and share it with colleagues and friends. And we hope that you do. So without further ado, I would like to briefly introduce our speakers today. With us, we have Ms. Patricia Meissner, and she is the CEO and co-founder of Actual Meds. And we have Mr. Brian Bainter, and he's the VP of Strategic Accounts. And I believe, Pat, are you going to kick us off here?
I am. I am. Thanks, Garrett.
Welcome.
And thank you. Hello, good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you are. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. We want to share our winning formula for using data and technology to drive better adherence performance. And and also to drive home a very important point that technology and data alone are not going to substitute for patient relationship or member relationship management and the care coordination that's equally important in attaining a five-star status for your adherence measures. With that said, I'd like to introduce you to our presenter today. That's, as Garrett mentioned, Brian Bainter. He's VP of our strategic accounts. Brian has very broad experience in a number of pharmacy areas, but he has deep expertise in the area of adherence, having run several plans, a number of plans for a large payer in Arizona for a number of years. A few months, I guess a couple of months ago, Brian came to our marketing group and said, I just saw this great movie. It's Brad Pitt's new movie, F1. And I think that, running an adherence program is like running a winning F1 strategic program. And we said, well, okay. Well, he was pretty convincing. And I hope that you are going to be entertained by his metaphor for that today, but also, there are a lot of nuances imparted by rigorous data management that I hope will land and be some of his pearls that you'll be able to apply to your own program. So I'm done with my speaking role. It's Brian's turn to share his knowledge and tell you about how to get to five stars in adherence. So he's our driver. Take it away, Brian.
Thanks, Pat. I appreciate it. And so, a little bit about Actual Meds. We provide pharmacy-based technology-enabled service solutions. Keyword there, service and technology. We work in HEDIS, STARS, transition of care, chronic disease management, and post-acute and long-term care. We currently have over 500,000 covered lives and across all 50 states, 140 plus clinical pharmacists. We work with health plans, large provider groups, long-term care facilities, and we're thought leaders in interoperability and technology. We participate in CMS Connectathons. We have 4 people, including myself, in measure update panels for Pharmacy Quality Alliance, PQA, and recently spoke at NCPDP about interoperability. As for myself, I have over 30 years of experience in pharmacy. As you can see from the gray hair, I'm a little bit older. But I started my pharmacy career at the tender age of 17 as a pharmacy cashier for Walgreens. But I've had experience in community pharmacy, PBMs, managed care, done some consulting work, and finally technology solutions as that's taken off. As Pat said, though, I have 10 plus years of managing pharmacy stars and HEDIS-related initiatives. I cut my teeth in stars for a long-term care, dual-eligible Medicare Medicaid plan here in Arizona with just 5,000 members. But that's really where I got my foothold and understood all the barriers that members were experiencing when it came to medication adherence or just healthcare in general. With this type of a plan, most of the patients to qualify for the plan met nursing home level criteria, but 75% of them lived in assisted living or in the community, which meant they didn't have those services that you would normally get in a nursing home. And so during this time, I would actually go to their house and visit them, go to member council meetings, host health fairs, and getting to know those types of patients really gave me a understanding of how difficult it is to just bill a medication sometimes, much less all the other things that goes on, which we'll talk about a bit in there. The one thing I didn't have over 10 years ago was the technology that we have today. And so over time, as technology has advanced and we've gotten more interoperable, we still have a long way to go, but technology has moved a long way to help us move the adherence measures up. So what's going on in CMS today? When it comes to adherence measures, it takes more than just trying to get a refill to achieve adherence. With the triple weighted measures, statins, RAS antagonists, and diabetes, the rates that have gone so high these days that we have just a small pocket of people left over to keep increasing the rates. Until recently, the reward structure had been linked to performance in the overall MA population. But as we've seen over the last couple of years, CMS is raising the bar again, as they always do. And there's a lot of upheaval in the Medicare STAR system. There's a lot of unknowns. What we do know is the adherence measures aren't going anywhere. They're still going to be triple weighted. And in order to reach overall 4 or 5 star level, you need to do well in the adherence measures. As we've seen over the years, I myself thought, okay, the cut points hit 90, 91%. They can't go up anymore. Well, I was wrong. They keep going up. Plans are getting more sophisticated with their data and their performance. The cut points keep getting raised. And, CMS included the Tukey outlier deletion rate into their cut point performance, which made the cut points, not significantly move up, but 1% up is pretty significant when it comes to adherence. In 2026, CMS will implement the SDS risk adjustment to the adherence measures. And to me, this is a double-edged sword. If you do very well in high-risk populations, this is going to help you because you're going to get a risk adjustment there. But if a lot of plans do well in those SDS risk adjusted adherence measures, it's also going to increase the cut points. So if you perform unwell in those populations, that's going to hurt you. So you really have to be focused in on your high-risk populations living in rural areas. And of course, we have a shifting reward structure to weightier patients that are dual eligible, LIS, or disabled. The Health Equity Index reward is going to come online in 2027. And, that's going to give a reward to those plans that do well across a number of measures, but it includes the adherence measures, which are triple weighted, which will give you a bump in your overall star rating if you do well. If you don't do well, it's going to take away from your overall star rating. So it's become more incumbent than ever to use data and service together in order to drive adherence rates in those populations that typically don't do as well as your traditional Medicare Advantage member. We do have poll questions, so this is our first poll question. I believe Garrett's going to take over at this point, but we are curious to hear what your biggest medication adherence challenge is to date. So,
All
Garrett,
right.
poll up.
Yes, you will see this on your screen here. And again, so the question is, what is your organization's biggest challenge in improving medication adherence rates? And choose your top two uh, that would apply here. And these, by the way, we're going to have a few of these, and these are anonymous, so this is just kind of for fun. And we're going to show the results here, so you can sort of see where you stack among your colleagues. And we've got the results are pouring in, so we'll give it a little bit of time here, another 10, 15 seconds for the results to come in. What is your organization's biggest challenge in improving medication adherence? Okay, I think most of the results have come in at this point. We're going to give it about another 10 seconds and we'll close it down. About 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right. Brian, are you able to see the results here on your screen?
Yeah, and I could see member engagement and outreach effectiveness is the top choice, followed by limited resources and staffing for adherence programs. Those are both big things. And I will say all 5 of these answers kind of go hand in hand. So I will talk a little bit about how we use data to identify the right member at the right time for interventions, which actually helps us increase our member engagement and outreach effectiveness. Those 3 things go hand in hand. And then how our service side addresses social determinants of health barriers. And, because you're right, adherence is a big lift and you have limited resources. So you better be identifying the right people at the right time to call, because you can't spend time calling people that don't need your call or have already filled a medication. So we're going to get into all of that, but thank you for answering the poll. So again, as Pat said, when they asked me to do this webinar, I had just seen that movie F1, Brad Pitt's movie F1, and I watched it again last night because it's so good. If you guys have not seen it yet, I recommend watching it. Jerry Bruckheimer did the movie, which is the same person did Top Gun. But I'm probably the only person in America or the world that walked away and heard about this webinar and said, you know what? An F1 race team is really similar to how an adherence team should be built, which either means I need to get a life or I'm on to something here at this point. So I did a little Google search. I took away from the movie. I'm not an F1 fan. I've never watched F1 before, but after watching the movie, I did a little research, and there are some distinct things. And what really, I guess I take home is it's an F1 team. And you need to have an adherence team. And all these things need to be working together in order for you to be successful. So on an F1 team, they have a design team, which are the people that build the car. They run the analytics on the car with the tire pressure, the heat on the tires, how long they're lasting, the engine, how it's running, the aerodynamics of the car. All those things go into making an awesome race car to win the race. Well, same thing is for our adherence program. We need an engine to drive our analytics and data to point us in the right direction and put us in position to win the adherence race. There's always a race plan. Before they go into every race, they sit down together, they look at the track, the conditions, the other drivers, what's going on with the car, and they have a plan going in with their desired outcomes. And we do the same thing in adherence. Every year, and even throughout the year, we have a race plan. And we look at, okay, here's what we saw last year during our last race to adherence. Here's where we ended up at. Here's how we're going to, increase or improve throughout time. During the race, there's race engineers, and these are the people that, as the driver's going around the track, they're talking to them, they're watching the car, they're seeing what's going on again with the other drivers. Hey, it started raining, you need to come in for new tires. We do the same thing for outreach and engagement. We have a plan going into the measurement year, but by April, May, June, that plan may change based on what we're seeing in the ground. Are there new therapies coming out that aren't covered that people are trying to get? Are we lagging in statins versus diabetes? Is there a particular provider group that's underperforming? And so we have engineers that are watching the data throughout the measurement year to make changes in order to optimize our performance. Every driver has a pit crew. These are the people that change the tires, put the gas in, give the driver a drink of water. And we have the same thing in adherence. These are the people making the calls to the members, outreaching to the providers, the pharmacies. It's the human touch. And without them, you can't reach high levels of medication adherence. No amount of technology is going to get you to where you need to be without this human touch. And then finally, they have race technicians, which, analyze after the race and after the race year to see where they can make improvements. We do the same thing with our adherence team, leveraging data to find continual pockets of improvement that we can do in the following year in order to keep increasing our adherence rates. So when you really think about it, and I guess this is how my dumb stars brain works, there are a lot of similarities between an F1 team and an adherence team. So I wanted to kind of walk through each of the team from the F1 team and kind of build that analogy around how it relates to an adherence team. Starting with the design team, which is where the foundation is laid for medication adherence. And I apologize, my keyboard keeps jumping to the next slide, so I'll do a good job of trying not to touch it, and it's very sensitive. But you need to start with a well-defined use case in order to determine data requirements. Like, how are we going to build this car? How are we going to build this engine? It needs to start with your target population. Are we doing Medicare, Medicaid, marketplace, commercial plans? Is there a high number of patients with social risk factors, dual eligibles, low income subsidized, disabled? One criteria that we manage a lot of because of the states we're in, Indian Health Services is kind of a unique population that needs to be looked at. What are the clinical risk factors going on in this population? Heart failure, diabetes, COPD, CKD. People in the adherence measures tend to have multiple health conditions, especially the ones that are not passing. There's a lot of barriers going on there. So you need to understand your target population and what we're building towards. Who are the stakeholders that are going to share the data with us? Give us the parts that we need to build the car. You have the primary vendor. We typically work with health plans, Medicare Advantage plans, marketplace plans, but we also work with provider groups, pharmacy benefit managers, and what we call strategic partners. These are other vendors within the health plan's purview that work for them, such as like home health providers. Everybody these days is at risk for medication adherence, and they're all struggling to figure out how can we take our population and improve our adherence, because again, we're all racing against each other in these star measures. And so you have to be better than the person next to you if you want to get those rewards back from Medicare and the health plan, depending on what your contract looks like. And then you need to define the reporting requirements and desired outcomes. Where are our sources of structured data coming from? What data models are we going to run? What cadence are we getting the data? And this is a big key, the cadence of data. Pharmacy lives, unlike medical care, pharmacy lives on a 24/7, 365-day-a-week cycle. People can go to the pharmacy any day of the week, 24 hours a day, and get a medication filled. And so cadence of data is key in order to identify the patients that need the outreach the most. And then what are the transfer protocols? This day and age with technology the way it is, your vendor, if you're going out to find a vendor or internally, you better be able to transfer data, whether it's through HL7, CDAs, FHIR. You need to have a number of different options for data protocols, because it's great that interoperability right now. Everybody might be using a different system. So within the design team, as we've kind of laid out all that groundwork, we build the car or the underlying engine of the car. Um, and this is all systems configured, tested, and ready at the start. So, at a minimum, you should find a vendor that should be able to provide this for you, which is, accept a target population, membership file, member roster, provider roster, know who's at risk, if there's strategic partners in there, and be able to ingest all that. They should also be able to ingest claims data, whether it comes from the PBM, the health plan, pharmacy operations, or it's downstream from a vendor that's working for a health plan. You need to be able to ingest and accept all sorts of data. And when we talk about data, it's not just pharmacy claims. Can you ingest RX norm, NCPDP files, LOINC codes, SNOMED codes? There's so much data running around there, and there's so many codes floating out there. You need to have a system that's able to take all this and funnel it into the vendor platform's interoperability framework and messaging standards. Again, is it coming HL7? Is it coming as a CDA? Is it coming through FHIR? So these are kind of the bare minimums at this point, which at Actual Meds, we're a technology company that moved into service. We've been doing this for 10 plus years already, which is why CMS keeps inviting us back to their connectathons. So at a minimum, you should be able to take this in. And the idea is that it runs through this engine and this funnel with the car, and you can create actionable analytics, actionable outcomes, actionable reports. So you're always looking at it. This takes the weight off the team. And I'll say 10 plus years ago when I started STARS, we were working off spreadsheets and pen and paper trying to figure out who needs a call for adherence and who doesn't, getting weekly claims updates, which, as things have moved and progressed, it's not good enough anymore. We need to be able to take claims in, refresh them daily, and move it out to make it actionable. The RACE plan. So this is the second key thing. Know your desired outcomes and key performance indicators. When you sit down and figure out your RACE plan, just like in a race here, you see the track, there, DRS detection zones 1 and 2, speed traps, lots of turns and twists. That's pretty much a CMS measurement year right there for you. But, before you go into there, what percent adherence increase will be needed to achieve your target? You should be looking at historic and your current data to provide, an estimated adherence lift. And if you can't do it and you're looking for a vendor, they should be able to look at your historic and current data. And when I say current data, if we're starting mid-year at something, we can look at your current data and determine, okay, here's where we think we can get you to by the end of the year. And the one thing as well is, when you build your race plan, whether it's at the beginning of the year or mid-year, that model needs to be dynamic and updated frequently throughout the measurement year, which is exactly how a race runs in F1. They'll start a race, they'll get 25 laps in and realize, oh, these tires aren't the right tires. We need to come in and box and get new tires on. We do the same thing in adherence. It's like you get halfway into the year and you realize all the changes you make, they're not working anymore, or they're not getting us to where we need to be. So we need to make adjustments, depending on the time of the measurement year. What type of health plan are we working with? What are the population demographics? What are we seeing on the ground in our race plan? So it's always great to have a plan going into the beginning of the year. Just make sure that plan has the flexibility allowed to change it mid-year. And we look at our data month over month and see where we need to make tweaks and changes to keep increasing our adherence rates. I talked a bit about the race engineers earlier, but these are my favorite guys. They're optimizing outreach and engagement when every second counts. We build priority algorithms trying to identify the right members at the right time. And that's one of our mottos here is right member at the right time. That's based on our ability to ingest claims daily. And this refreshes our claims every single day, including reversals of claims. And again, I think this is where we need to go. Again, now that adherence rates have reached into the 90 percentiles, you have less than 10% of the population that's not adherent. Half of those people, they're never going to be adherent because they either discontinued the med, fell off the plan. So that leaves a really small population. So if you're relying on weekly claims updates or monthly claims updates, that's just not enough because you have, again, what we saw in the poll, a limited amount of resources, and you need to try to engage these members. So by identifying what's going on a daily basis, if you called a person, you get a claims refresh on Monday, you call them on Friday, well, they may have filled on Tuesday. And now they're mad at you because, yeah, I just got that medication. Why are you calling me? So that causes member abrasion. And you just wasted time calling a patient that doesn't need a call because they filled their medication. Again, pharmacy runs 24/7, 365 days a year. So, again, here at Actual Meds, we refresh that daily, and that's our recommendation is refresh your claims daily. So you're hitting those patients and understanding where they're at. It gets back to, also looking at historical data. While that offers a good starting point or a piece of the puzzle, if you just looked at the people who failed last year, you're not going to be very successful. Because I've looked at STARS adherence data for 10 plus years now, and I can tell you half the people that failed last year, they're going to pass this year, and half the people that pass this year, equal number is going to fail the next year. So, things happen during the measurement year that historical data can't define, which is change in health status. Now I'm in the hospital. Now I have a new health condition. Now I'm dealing with this. I lost my job. I lost my housing. Things are going on all the time within these people's lives that make it difficult for them to get medication. And just because they passed the measure last year doesn't mean they're going to pass the measure this year. And just because they failed last year doesn't mean they're going to fail this year. But so that's why, again, coming in with daily claims and looking at who's filling when is key to finding the right people. And that increases engagement. We run about a 58% engagement rate with our members because we're calling them at the right time when they need the help the most. Which gets back to the next bullet point. Making more calls to members does not always result in better adherence measures. You can call them as much as you want. If they don't need you or they're not going to answer, it's not going to help. And so more of the same intervention doesn't necessarily result in better adherence measures. I will say, at Actual Meds, one thing we do, we'll try a member a couple times. If we can't get a hold of them, we'll call their pharmacy and double check the phone number. Hey, what's going on with this member? If the pharmacy doesn't have good information, then we'll call the provider and check in with the provider. And it's because we're making less calls, because we're making the right calls, that we have the ability to spend the time doing those things, which has served us very well over the years. And so just don't make more calls to members. If you're not able to get a hold of the member, maybe check in with their providers or their pharmacy and see what's going on. And then again, real-time claims analysis identifies members' experience and barrier to care. Also being able to pull in not just their adherence meds, but all their medications, helps you to identify areas where maybe the adherence med is not the problem, but they're having a problem with something else. And so the more data you have, the more you're able to help and identify those barriers of care when you do get a hold of them. The pit crew. Again, I love my pit crew. I lived in a service side oriented fashion, working in community pharmacy. And then when I was working at my long-term care, Medicare, Medicaid plan, it was all about service. I wish I had the data and analytics that we have today back then, but I didn't. But now that we do, comprehensive diagnostics offers efficient support. And you're going to hear me say this over and over again, but you use data to help identify the right member at the right time, which increases member engagement and helps build relationships. as I said before, if you call a member that just got a fill yesterday, they're not going to be very happy with you. I've had so many of those calls. But if you call a member that's out of refills and they have something else going on, you help them out, that's what helps build that relationship. Helping the member helps them remember you, helps build that relationship. And the next time you call them, they're going to pick up the phone. So you have to be able to have the data driven diagnostics to identify the right people, which gives you the time to make those outreaches to reduce member abrasion and provider abrasion and build relationships. And again, as I said before, having the right data to paint a complete picture of the member. I can't tell you how many times, again, we call about lisinopril adherence and they're asking us about their Eliquis or, another medication that they're on, or why can't I get this filled? And we see there's a prior authorization needed for that. So, you want to have a full data picture to have a complete picture of the member. So, again, we use data-driven diagnostics to help our team engage the right people and give them the time to do that outreach in a way that provides the most help to that patient. Getting back to the PIT crew, member support by pharmacists and member care coordinators is how we use that. We have, again, 140 plus clinical pharmacists across the country. And there's some key things, and we have member care coordinators, pharmacy technicians, but those are the people making the outreaches initially to the member. And then as things come up, they'll transfer them to our clinical pharmacists for discussion. But the key always is when you're building your team or your PIT crew, find the right people. The people that you're hiring, they should be proficient in how the pharmacy channel works, but also how the medical channel operates. They want to have be able to have a good picture of the benefit structure that the member has on their Medicare or Medicaid plan, but also know, as they're trying to get a prescription filled, is the barrier at the doctor, is the barrier at the pharmacy, is the barrier in transportation, and we'll get to this in just a minute about unexpected questions, but they need to understand or at least have a summary knowledge of the medical channel, because they're going to get questions about, I didn't get my oxygen, I didn't get my hospital bed. Can you help me with that? We always encourage our PIT crew to build partnerships. We do this with every health plan provider we work with. We want to open the communication channels with the health plans, providers, pharmacies, and vendors. And we do this in order to, we know full well that we can't solve all the problems. We're calling about medication adherence. Other problems are going to come up. We need to be able to have communication channels open with the health plans or their doctor or their pharmacy, or if there's other vendors in the market, to be able to work with them in order to solve that problem. Our PIT crew understands that healthcare is delivered locally. While we do have a national presence, we're in all 50 states and Puerto Rico. When we build adherence teams, we build them with a local or an eye on locality, or at least, and I understand some Medicare Advantage plans are PPOs that cross states. So we would build it around the Medicare Advantage plan in those states they're in. But we want the same people calling the same doctors, the same pharmacies, so they can build relationships at the local level. The other thing that we do is work with our health plans to create single points of contact. So, rather than, if we come across something that may need case management support, we previously tried, here's a case management email box, you can send it there. What we found works better is to have a single point of contact within the case management team so that our clinical pharmacists and nurses can call them or email them directly, hey, we're having an issue with this person. Can you help us get this solved? But if possible, we like to keep our teams local. So that means Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada. So they understand the local healthcare landscape, who the doctors are, who the pharmacies are, and what the pain points are, and also what's going on with the patients in those areas. I'm telling you, Arizona is much different than New York when it comes to healthcare. When it comes to medication adherence, we always advise to avoid quality gap closure overload. While it's great to close as many gaps as possible when you do get that person on the phone, because as we saw in the poll, it's really difficult with member engagement. Adherence is the three adherence measures, in my opinion, are the three most difficult measures to manage out of all the STAR measures, because they're the only measures that may need to be closed at a minimum 4 times a year, at a maximum 12 times a year, depending on how often that member's filling that medication. Is it a 90-day supply or 30-day supply? So it's not just a one and done, like a breast cancer screening where, hey, can we get you in for a screening, get that done, and then that measure's gone. On top of that, the pharmacy channel is much more difficult to navigate than the medical channel sometimes. I don't know if you've been to the local CVS or Walgreens, not trying to beat them up, but they're busy and it's really difficult for patients, especially those that need a lot of help, to get the help they need there. And so if we try to overload them with too many things, they shut down. And again, this is coming from my 10 years of experience trying to blend other quality gap closures into adherence, and it becomes too difficult. They need a medication, they need it filled, whether it's a coverage issue, a transportation issue, or whatever barrier that is. If we try to do too much at one time, they're just going to shut down on you. Now, what you should be doing is building a relationship with the adherence refill. So if you do need to call them back about breast cancer screening, and we have done that, we've done end of the year HEDIS pushes for certain health plans where, hey, we've had a relationship with this person. Let's give them a call for you guys and see if we can't get them in for a breast cancer screening or an A1C test or what have you. So, but we try not to do too many quality gap closures at one time. Been talking about this a bit, but expect the unexpected questions. We want our team to be prepared to help with not only adherence, but with non-adherence related questions. And we'll get into an example on the next slide about a patient, which goes to the nth degree on how we do that. But inevitably, a certain number of members are going to ask you about, I got no problem with my medications, but I need transportation to the doctor. I need to get labs done. And can you help me with that? I don't have a primary care physician. Can you help me with that? And so, we always expect the unexpected questions, having the data at hand so we can see all their medications and their health conditions. That goes a long way in helping us to answer those questions, but also building partnerships and communication channels helps us get them the right help. And then finally, this gets back into relationship building. We go the distance, and your PIT crew should do the same thing. We don't just tell a member what they need to do, we help them do it until it's finished. So whether it's our clinical nurse or a clinical pharmacist or a member care coordinator, if they need an appointment with their PCP, we help them make the appointment and we make sure that they're able to get there. If they need care management support to get oxygen or a hospital bed or what have you, we work with that case manager until we know that it's on its way and it's going to be received. And again, that just builds relationship, it builds trust, but it also helps us close the loop that, this member wasn't just left out there and to fend for themselves, given a phone number to call member services or what have you. But those are the keys, again, to driving medication adherence. And the reason being, again, we may not need to call this person back. And so if we help them go the distance, the next time we call about adherence, they're going to want to talk to us. So I promised you a member story, and this is one of my favorites. This was a gentleman, Medicare Advantage member, dual eligible, living in Tiburon, New Mexico, which I had to look it up on the map, very rural area, low access to services. And he was behind he was in all three adherence measures, he was behind on his medication. So when our member care coordinator gave him a call, he indicated, well, there's no pharmacy close by, and I typically I have a hard time getting there because I don't have transportation. So we talked to him about mail order, and he said, well, I lost my key to my mailbox, so I'm not able to receive mail order because that's where they would put it at. And it turns out he also needed an oxygen refilled, and he lacked reliable electricity because his house was run on a generator and he couldn't afford gas for his generator. So what did we do? We actually split this between a clinical pharmacist and our nurse care manager, but we set him up with mail order. Our clinical pharmacist actually identified his closest local post office and worked with him and the post office to get him a new mail key to his mailbox to get that secured mailbox delivered, or be able to get his mail and his medications out of there. Our nurse care manager worked with his Medicare and Medicaid care management team, was able to get his oxygen delivered out to his house, linked him up with his Medicaid benefits, which he didn't know he had, set him up for a home visit and meal delivery, and they were able to find resources through a community program for fuel for his generator so he could pay for that. So this one call about adherence turned into all sorts of things for this member, but he was able to gain consistent access to his medications and get the health services that he qualified for. And turns out there was a community support program out in his area that could go visit him at his house and make sure he's doing okay. So definitely dramatically improved his life. But again, this is not the common case, but it is a case that, you're going to come across. And, I will say the gentleman was medication adherent for the rest of the year after that. But we were able to build a relationship with him through all these different things that we did. And it goes back to that pit crew of creating communication channels, having somebody to work with, expecting unexpected questions. We could have very easily just said, oh, you should call member services. Here's their 1-800 number, and give them a call. But we don't do that here at Actual Meds. And when you're calling about adherence, I don't think you should as well either. You should have the resources set up in order to drive it to this level for those patients. And then finally, after the pit crew, we had the race technicians analyze performance during and after the race. And, and again, I think we've all seen it. The adherence rates these days, I think the Medicare Advantage rates are pushing into the 90 percentile, except for the diabetes measure, but that's a different example. The cut points are going to continue to increase. They might level off a bit. I keep expecting them to do, but every time I expect the cut points to level off, they just go up again. So it's becoming more difficult to find where there are opportunities to continue improving. And there's a scene in the movie where Brad Pitt's actually sitting with the team before a race, and he's looking at the pit crew leader, he's looking at the race engineers, he's looking at the design team, and he's talking about himself. And he's like, if I could pick up a tenth of a second from you, a tenth of a second from you, a tenth of a second from you, and a tenth of a second from myself, that's almost a half second per lap. And over 58 laps, that's the difference between first and last place. And that's where we're getting to with the adherence rates. You need to find small pockets of opportunity within your membership population. And that's what the race technicians do. You're not going to find a big hitter unless you're underperforming at this point. But when you get to 90 to 91, 92% adherence, again, you have less than 10% of the population left. Half of those probably won't pass anyways. So you have a pool of about 4 to 5% of the population, and you're not going to find one thing that's going to drive you over the top to where you need to be. It's going to be a lot of small pockets of opportunities. So some of the things I typically look at, large provider groups or medium-sized provider groups. Are they on a value-based contracting? How are they performing? Particular pharmacies. Is there an advantage to working with a particular pharmacy that has a large proportion of your patients? I will use an example. One of our clients, they experienced a PBM change in a pharmacy that had not a ton, but 100 to 150 adherence members with them. They went from being able to fill a 90-day supply to only being able to do 30-day supplies because of their pharmacy network contract. Can I fix their pharmacy network contract? No, I really can't fix their pharmacy network contract. And we did notify the client about that, and they're working with them to try and fix it. But we had to figure out a way to work with that pharmacy to make sure, put extra attention on their membership, because now they're going to have to come every month. We don't want to drive patients away from their pharmacy. We don't do that. If they want to move to mail order another pharmacy because they want to get 90-day supplies, we'll help them but it's not something we suggest. So we work with the pharmacy itself to see how can we partner and help these patients cross the finish line. Also, value-based contract partners. One opportunity that I was able to identify when I was at the health plan, and I continued on with my work with Actual Meds, look at your federally qualified health centers. We have a lot of them, especially in rural areas that we work in. They tend to have a lot of provider groups, and they tend to have a lot of adherence patients, and they have their own pharmacy. But what they also have are clinical pharmacists on staff. And rather than calling 10 different doctors' offices trying to get adherence done, we found it more opportunity working with a single clinical pharmacist that's able to message all those doctors. So now we've created a communication channel with this FQHC where we send them a list of members that we're shown as non-adherent, and then that pharmacist can either call the member or work with the provider on our behalf to drive medication adherence. So those are some of the small pockets of opportunity you should be looking for out there. When you do find them, there are certain things you should be able to consider. Is there a viable solution for this? Is the lift worth the effort? Who else needs to be involved? So, is there a viable solution? I will say we have a couple states where there's a large portion of Indian Health Services. One of the reasons they tend to perform lower on the adherence measures versus your traditional Medicare Advantage members. A lot of Indian Health Services use repackaged medications. And for those of you that are not familiar with Medicare Part D, drugs that are repackaged are excluded from Part D reimbursement, which means that claim will never reach CMS, it'll never reach Acumen, and it'll never be counted. It's a really difficult challenge because the pharmacy is going to order what the pharmacy is going to order. I can't tell them not to order that medication. And so all we can do is, try to help guide them, either to mail order, which again, we don't want to disturb them from the pharmacy, but it's a really difficult solution we've been trying to work on for a number of years in order to solve. But you have to ask yourself, if I'm going to create a new intervention or a new solution, is it even viable? Is the lift worth the effort? You might be able to identify a practice and their performance is underperforming versus the rest of the population. But if they only have like 5 to 10 members, is it really worth your effort? And it may be. Depends on the size of your Medicare plan. But you need to be asking. If you only have a couple thousand Medicare Advantage members in your plan, then maybe those 5 to 10 people are the difference between a 3-star and a 4-star. But if you have 100,000, those 5 to 10 people, they're not even going to make it that. And so maybe you should search for something else. And then, as always, who else needs to be involved? Going back to the pharmacy that we were working with, we identified a pharmacy that was unable to fill 90-day supplies because of the network change. I can't solve that, so we need to involve the health plan. But as always, and because the health plan, they're working on it, but that's going to take time. We need to involve the pharmacy. So some of the solutions you just can't fix on your own, and so you need to be willing, or your vendor needs to be willing to go out there and help you fix those problems. I just want to do a quick check of time. Looks like I'm getting close, down to 11 and a half minutes. So let's get to poll question 2. Current process and technology. Oops, sorry. Go ahead, Garrett.
All right, sure thing. Okay, so poll question 2. Which best describes your current use of technology in your medication adherence programs? Question 1, or solution 1 rather, is we are fully automated targeting calls, analytics, workflows, which we ran out of space for, and member management, or we're partially automated with some manual processes, or we're mostly spreadsheet driven with basic reporting tools, or we are currently implementing technology. By the way, this is going to be anonymous, so don't feel like you can answer honestly here. No shame. We realize there's a lot of different situations out there and budgets and all those kind of different constraints. So what we want to see is kind of get an accurate representation of what folks are actually working with out there. And then we're going to show the results here momentarily. So go ahead and select, again, which best describes your current use of technology in your medication adherence programs. It looks like most people have voted at this point. We'll give it maybe another 10 seconds here and then close it down. And okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, Brian, are you able to see the results here?
Yeah, I'm seeing the results. And I'm not surprised. I think everybody's in that, the majority is in that partially automated with some manual processes. That's just the nature of healthcare. We want interoperability. It's very difficult to do because everybody's using a different system. Especially in the day and age of vertical integration, you have multiple people coming in. I'd say when I was at my health plan, we merged with 2 health plans and other vendors. So I had 3 platforms, 4 different analytic systems. It gets really difficult to manage all that. Good for you that are fully automated, targeting calls, analytics, and member management. I'm sure you guys are kind of looking just like we're talking about, refining it every year. That's where we need to get to. And for those of you on spreadsheet driven with basic reporting tools, I will say we've been talking with we're getting a lot of calls from provider practices because again, they're at risk for this. They don't have I won't say the money or the tools, but it's a big lift for them to build a platform for medication adherence when it's just a small piece of their business. But they're all at risk for it, the primary care physicians, and so they're looking for it. So if that's you, please give us a call. We'd love to help with that. Let's get back to the slides. So I did want to just show some slides. These are some performance slides that we've put together based on our results. Again, running this type of model as we have. This is a comparison of a health plan that we took on in 2024. We actually didn't start until March due to contracting issues. But within 9 months, we were able to raise their adherence rates. And this is a 50,000 live MAPD plan. 65% of the membership has a social risk factor. And we were able to raise their rates up, 4 to 5%, depending on the measure, just in 1 year. And that's, with this model that we've implemented and been refining over the last couple of years, that's typically what we see for a new plan that's performing at this rate. So, it's never too late to put a new solution in. If you're looking for something, this is what you can expect with this type of model. Looking over time, this is one of our longer tenured health plans, which is a 25,000 live MAPD plan. 48% of the membership has a social risk factor. And I will admit, we tend to work with plans that have high number of dual eligibles, LIS, and disabled patients. This is actually one of the smaller ones. And it's because there's so many challenges in that population. But, one thing this is going back 5 years in the star ratings where they started at and how we've grown them. But this has given us a learning curve over the years, and we've experienced a number of challenges with this plan. Again, due to vertical integration, there was a company merger with member expansion. They doubled their membership lives in 1 year for an underperforming contract and merged it into this contract. They had a PBM change, and of course, as we've all learned, the new diabetes therapies have kind of stagnated the diabetes measure. But I want to show when you're doing things right, the rates continue to go up. And as you see in 2024, we had our best year with this plan. We were able to reach 89% for diabetes and 92% for RAS antagonists and statins. And again, this is an open network plan. There is no capture. They can use most any pharmacy, most any doctor that they want to, go to the hospital wherever they want to. And they also tend to live in rural areas, a lot of low access to services, small towns around there. So this is one of our highlight plans that we've learned a lot from over the years on how to manage medication adherence. Poll question 3, and again, I know we're coming down on time. So Garrett, you want to go through this last poll?
Sure thing. Going ahead and running it now. And this is pretty straightforward one. How many covered lives are in your plan? Is it less than 10,000, 10 to 25,000, 25 to 50, 50 to 100, or over 100,000 in your plan? Again, this will give us kind of help us gauge the audience out there, and then you'll be able to see also who's joining us today.
Yeah, it's kind of even
Okay.
across the board as I'm looking at it.
Yeah, it's coming in. We're able to see it in real time here. So
Yeah.
give it another maybe 5 long seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and go ahead and close it down.
Yeah.
All right.
I will just say for those plans over 100,000 lives, they tend to have multiple contracts across the country. And, with the health equity index reward, the social, the risk adjusted adherence measures, um, I always encourage them, start looking at your plans one by one, because a lot of times those high risk members, they get lost in the general population. If you have 1 million members, it's very easy to lose sight of the 100,000 dual eligibles and low income subsidized, but they're going to matter in the coming years, especially as health equity continues to be a focus for Medicare. They're going to be weighted heavier, and they're going to cause your rates to either go down and your health equity reward. So they're going to drive that. Okay, just to sum everything up, 5 ways to win the race. Precision targeting wins the race. Having automated, data-driven technology to identify the right person at the right time. You really want to eliminate wasted outreach and focus on high-impact members. Smart timing beats speed alone. Again, this gets back to data. You're contacting the right member at the right time at optimal moments. It really opens up engagement. And I can't say enough about using daily claims refresh, including reverse claims, as well as other sources of data to help drive that. Because knowing what's going on at that time just increases the phone call. Everybody wants to talk to you when they need something, and when that pill bottle is empty, they're more often wanting to talk to you. So, champion pit crews deliver results. Make sure you're hiring the right teams. People that can build human connections. I know we talk a lot about motivational interviewing, which we do, but you have to have the right people. Somebody that can build a relationship. Robocalls. People get plenty of robocalls, and I'll say robo-texts. I get a text from CVS probably 15 times a month, and I love my CVS pharmacy. Don't get me wrong, but they're getting texts from everywhere. So when you have the right data analytics, at that point you can make that call with a real-time human. Data-driven strategies cross the finish line. So again, analytics during the race, after the race, prior to the race. Be looking at your analytics to determine where you can make up those 10th of a second here, 10th of a second there, 10th of a second here. And then that's what's going to help you achieve those Medicare Advantage adherence measures that are 2 to 3% above the Medicare Advantage averages. And teamwork makes the dream work. Whether it's internal or you're working with a vendor, build those communication channels with your data team, your pit crew, your race engineers. Adherence is a 365-day-a-year thing. Trust me, even towards the end of the year, after people have already passed the measure, we're still calling them in November or December, getting them ready for the next year. Make sure they get that 90-day fill prior to going into the next year, so then they don't hit the measure until March or April of the next year, and it lowers the workload that way. So make sure you're working with your team to increase engagement, not just within your vendors and health plan, but also with your local healthcare systems, providers, and pharmacy. And final lap alert, there's still time to cross the finish line. We only have weeks left, but it's never too late to start a new initiative, especially with actual meds. We can stand up new plans within as little as 2 weeks after contracting, and help to stop the bleeding and improve adherence rates through the end of the year. Trying to do it alone, sometimes it's unrealistic. Especially if you're in a quality program, you might have 15 other measures you're working on. So adherence takes the most work and the biggest team. So if if you're trying to do it alone, that might not work for you. We have proven results, track record of success. Last year, from new plans we started, late in the year, we were able to improve adherence rates for 14 out of 18 measures and their actual star rating for 10 out of 18 measures. So, and we offer scalable tech and human solutions. We offer both technology and the service side that I've been talking about. And I'm down to the wire.
Yeah, unfortunately, we are kind of pushing time at this point, and obviously there's a lot here. And for those of you who asked questions, don't worry, someone will reach out to you to make sure we get your question answered via email. So, and if you have one right now that you're thinking about, go ahead and drop it in still to the questions module, and we're going to get to as many as we can. But Brian, thank you so much for a fantastic presentation. There was a lot here. This is very meaningful. And as we close out, I wanted to encourage you all to head over real quick to vbcexhibithall.com and check out the Actual Meds virtual exhibit booth that they have there. And I think, Brian, if you could fast go up your slides, I think one or two. You will see a little picture of that. So there we go. And that's what it looks like. And there's a lot of great resources there. You can read up on them. If you want to contact them, of course, you can do that through there and read up on what they're doing in the space. There's also at the library at bbcexhibithall.com is where we're going to be archiving today's webinar. And there's going to be also other webinars that we've done with Actual Meds and on a lot of other topics there too. So feel free to browse that library and head over to, again, bbcexhibithall.com. And as we close out, again, if you would like to reach directly out to the Actual Meds team, Brian, if you could go to that last slide, you will see their information here. And again, this will be in the slide. There it is. Brian's information, this will be in the slides that you can download. So when we're done, we're going to send you over a link to where you can access this recording and get to the slides. But I know we're over time, so I wanted to let you go. But thank you all so much for spending your afternoon with us. We hope that you join us on the next one. And until then, have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.